4 years, Sister Wives viewers have watched Kody Brown's once polygamous dream unravel before their eyes. What began as a seemingly united plural family of one man, 4 wives, and a shared vision of living the principle slowly dissolved into tension, mistrust, and bitter separation. Christine left first, publicly announcing the end of her marriage to Kody in 2021 after decades together. Janelle followed, revealing in 2022 that she too had spiritually separated from him. Mary, whose marriage to Kody had already been reduced to a legal formality years earlier, finally acknowledged their split publicly at the start of 2023. Only Robyn, the youngest and last wife to join the family, remains in a monogamous marriage with him. For a long time, Kody's explanations for the breakdowns were carefully crafted, sometimes blaming the stress of plural marriage, sometimes pointing to family divisions fueled by the children, other times vaguely alluding to religious differences. But recently, in an unguarded moment that caught even his most loyal defenders off guard, Kody let slip what many fans had suspected all along. The underlying reason his marriages failed had little to do with external pressures and everything to do with his own shifting priorities and inability to maintain emotional intimacy with more than one partner. It happened during a casual exchange that wasn't even meant to be a major revelation. Conversation was part of a behind-the-scenes segment, where Kody was reflecting on his journey in plural marriage and the toll it had taken. He mentioned that he had stopped trying with some of his wives years before they officially separated. It wasn't a sudden breakup, he implied. It was a gradual withdrawal of effort, a slow pulling back from relationships that no longer served his vision of what family should be. He admitted that once he felt a wife wasn't fully on his team or aligned with him, he emotionally checked out. It was a startling confession because it reframed the entire narrative of the past decade. Instead of presenting himself as a man trying desperately to keep his family together against impossible odds, Kody now sounded like someone who had quietly made peace with the idea of letting certain relationships die on the vine. Viewers were not shocked so much as vindicated. For years, many had pointed to his obvious favoritism toward Robyn, which he had long denied or downplayed. They had noticed how he spent most of his time at Robyn's home, neglected visits with the other wives, and poured emotional energy into his youngest children while appearing distant from his older kids. They had seen the way Christine's complaints about being undervalued were brushed off, how Janelle was left to manage on her own, and how Mary's attempts at reconciliation were met with cold detachment. The new admission merely confirmed what the audience had already pieced together from watching season after season of small, telling moments. Trouble for Kody is that reality television creates an indelible record. Every affectionate glance toward Robyn and every dismissive shrug toward another wife has been preserved on camera. Fans could go back and trace the pattern, the point in the timeline where his enthusiasm waned in one relationship while growing in another. It became increasingly difficult for him to sell the idea that he had been equally committed to all 4 wives until outside factors tore them apart. Now, with his own words, he has all but admitted that his feelings simply shifted and he allowed that shift to determine the fate of each marriage. Christine's departure now looks less like the tragic loss Kody once painted it as and more like the inevitable result of years without meaningful effort from him. Her complaints about a lack of intimacy, both physical and emotional, had been dismissed in the past as her being dramatic or unreasonable. Now, Kody's confession essentially validates her perspective. If he stopped trying to connect with her once he decided she wasn't supportive enough of him, then it explains why she finally had the courage to walk away. She didn't leave a functioning relationship. She left a marriage that had been emotionally abandoned long before she announced her exit. Janelle's split from Kody, too, takes on a different light. She was often the most independent of the wives, managing her own finances and making decisions without seeking Kody's approval. He had at times praised her for her self-sufficiency, but it is now clear that her autonomy may have made it easier for him to disengage. If she didn't demand constant attention or reassurance, it was simple for him to stop nurturing that bond. Yet when disagreements over property, loyalty to Robyn, and the handling of the pandemic created rifts, there was no deep reservoir of emotional closeness to draw on. The marriage couldn't withstand the strain because it hadn't been actively maintained for years. Mary's case is perhaps the most tragic in the eyes of fans. She was Kody's first wife, the one who legally married him so they could adopt Robyn's children when the law required it. Their romantic relationship had already been faltering before that decision, but the catfishing scandal in 2015 pushed them even further apart. 4 years afterward, Mary held on to hope that they might rebuild their connection, while Kody consistently expressed disinterest in pursuing a romantic reconciliation. His recent slip all but confirms that he had written off that relationship long ago, keeping it in place for the sake of appearances and perhaps out of a sense of obligation, but not because he had any genuine desire to restore it. What makes Kody's revelation particularly striking is that it highlights an unspoken truth about plural marriage, at least as practiced in his household. Maintaining 4 separate marriages requires ongoing investment in each one. If a husband decides to stop trying in one relationship, there is no safety net. Unlike monogamous couples, where disengagement might still leave 2 people sharing the same home and daily life, in a plural family, the physical and emotional distance between spouses can grow vast very quickly. Once Kody stopped putting in the effort, the marriage was effectively over, even if it lingered in name only for years. In many ways, this confession is the culmination of a long transformation in Kody's public persona. When Sister Wives premiered in 2010, he portrayed himself as an energetic, idealistic man committed to building a large, harmonious family against all odds. He spoke often about the spiritual rewards of plural marriage and the sacrifices everyone made for the greater good. Viewers saw him laughing with his wives, doting on his children, and hosting family gatherings where the energy seemed genuinely warm. But over time, the cracks began to show. Disputes over housing in Las Vegas, disagreements about moving to Flagstaff, and conflicts about pandemic rules revealed a more rigid, controlling side of Kody. His interactions with Christine grew noticeably strained. He seemed increasingly irritable with Janelle's independence. His patience with Mary evaporated almost entirely. And through it all, Robyn remained the one wife who seemed to receive his consistent affection and support. By the time the family was dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, Kody's priorities were obvious to anyone paying attention. He set strict visitation rules that he expected all the wives and children to follow, but those rules seemed to conveniently align with spending most of his time at Robyn's home. When other family members questioned his fairness, he doubled down, accusing them of undermining him. It was during this period that Christine's breaking point arrived, leading to her explosive decision to leave. Now, knowing that Kody had already mentally and emotionally stepped away from certain marriages, those years of conflict take on a different meaning. They weren't the cause of the breakups. They were the moments when the inevitable finally became visible. If there is any surprise here, it's only that Kody said it out loud. He has always been careful about controlling the narrative, often framing himself as the misunderstood father and husband who gave everything for his family. Admitting that he withdrew from some marriages long before they ended undermines that story. It opens him up to criticism that he didn't take his own commitments seriously, that he played favorites, and that he failed to live up to the principles he once preached. This kind of admission may also be a turning point. For Kody, it might be the first step toward acknowledging his own role in the family's collapse. For his former wives, it could be a form of closure, hearing directly from him that the problems weren't just about outside circumstances but about choices he made. And for the audience, it's a reminder that reality TV only tells part of the story. The rest is hidden in the small, candid moments when the cameras aren't meant to catch the truth. Kody's revelation also raises questions about the future of sister wives. The show has thrived on the drama of the family's changing dynamics, but now that the polygamous marriage has been reduced to a single couple, its premise has shifted. Will viewers remain invested in watching Kody and Robyn navigate life together, especially if his relationships with the rest of the family remain fractured? Or will the show pivot to focus more on the independent lives of Christine, Janelle, and Meri, who have all embarked on new chapters outside of plural marriage? Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. Kody's unintentional honesty has reframed the way fans will remember the sister wives story. The breakup of the Brown family is no longer just a tale of outside pressures and clashing personalities. It's also a story about what happens when the person at the center of a complex web of relationships decides, quietly and over time, to stop holding it together. And for those who have been watching closely for over a decade, that truth is not surprising at all. When Sister Wives premiered in 2010, it came with a promise that seemed both daring and endearing. One man, 4 wives, and a single family unit working together to prove that plural marriage could be functional, even joyful, in modern America. The center of it all was Kody Brown, a self-assured, talkative, and often charismatic man who said he felt called by faith to live the principle of polygamy. The early seasons painted a picture of a bustling household with shared responsibilities, interconnected relationships, and a sense of unity in the face of outside judgment. But the past 15 years have told a very different story, one of slowly fraying bonds, mounting resentment, and eventual collapse. Now, after years of carefully framing the narrative, Kody has let slip what appears to be the core truth about why his plural marriages fell apart. In an unguarded moment that was part of a behind-the-scenes reflection, Kody admitted that in some of his marriages, he had stopped trying long before the official separations happened. It was not a single dramatic betrayal or an irreconcilable difference that led to the unraveling, it was a steady withdrawal of effort. Once he felt a wife wasn't on his team, his motivation to maintain intimacy and connection evaporated. For the audience who had tracked every cold glance and distant comment across the seasons, this was not shocking, but it was significant to hear it come from him directly. The significance lies in what it reveals about the internal dynamics of the Brown family over the years. Christine's departure in 2021 is now reframed. She had long complained about being neglected, about intimacy disappearing from her marriage to Kody, and about feeling undervalued in family decisions. Kody often countered by suggesting she was unwilling to be part of the larger family vision, painting himself as the one making the sacrifices. But with his own words, he has essentially confirmed Christine's long-standing grievance. He pulled back emotionally because he no longer saw her as supportive enough, and the marriage was left to wither. When Christine finally announced she was leaving, it wasn't a sudden break. It was the culmination of years without meaningful engagement from her husband. Janelle's separation in 2022 follows the same pattern. Unlike Christine, Janelle rarely complained on camera about a lack of intimacy, but she valued independence and self-sufficiency. She often said she and Kody had a practical partnership, with each respecting the other's space. However, when pandemic disputes erupted and loyalties were tested, the lack of deep emotional connection became a fatal flaw. Kody's revelation suggests that once he sensed Janelle's unwillingness to fully align with his strict COVID rules and his increasing preference for Robyn's household, he began disengaging from her too. By the time property disputes over Coyote Pass and arguments about family unity reached their peak, there was little left to salvage. Meri's situation had been dire for much longer. She was Kody's first wife, and for many years she appeared to hold a special place in the family's hierarchy. But the legal divorce in 2014, done so that Kody could marry Robyn and adopt her children, changed the dynamic irreversibly. Then came the 2015 catfishing scandal, after which Kody admitted publicly that he no longer desired a romantic relationship with Meri. Still, she clung to hope for reconciliation, attending therapy sessions and expressing her willingness to work on the marriage. Kody's latest admission makes clear that this hope was misplaced. He had mentally ended the marriage years earlier, maintaining only a nominal relationship for appearances and perhaps to avoid public backlash. What stands out in all these cases is not that disagreements happened, that is inevitable in any marriage, let alone four simultaneous ones, but that Kody made a deliberate choice to stop investing in relationships once they no longer met his personal expectations. In a plural marriage, that choice carries even greater consequences. The wives did not share a single household where physical proximity might have kept them engaged. Each lived separately, and Kody's time and emotional energy were divided according to his own preferences. Once he stopped visiting as often, once he stopped initiating emotional or physical intimacy, the distance between him and a wife became literal as well as figurative. Fans who have followed the show since its early days have been quick to point out that Kody's revelation aligns perfectly with what they've been observing on screen for years. As far back as the Las Vegas seasons, when the family lived in 4 separate homes in a cul-de-sac, viewers noted that Kody seemed more relaxed and affectionate in Robyn's company. While he made appearances at the other wives' homes, his visits often seemed more perfunctory. When the family relocated to Flagstaff in 2018, the separation became even more pronounced. Without the convenience of neighboring homes, Kody's time allocation became a glaring indicator of his priorities. Pandemic years sealed the perception of favoritism. Kody instituted strict rules for seeing the family, rules that seemed tailor-made to keep him primarily in Robyn's orbit. He argued that these measures were for everyone's safety, but when other wives or adult children questioned them, he accused them of not respecting his leadership. Christine, in particular, grew frustrated that the rules meant he barely saw her or their younger children. Janelle, too, balked at the restrictions, especially when it meant limited interaction with her adult sons. The contrast was stark. While the other households saw Kody sporadically, Robyn's home became his base. This lopsided arrangement fed directly into the resentment and estrangement that ultimately fractured the family. Christine's exit was explosive, with her packing up Kody's belongings and openly declaring that she no longer wanted to be married to a man who favored one wife above the rest. Janelle's was quieter but no less decisive. She made it clear she valued her independence more than continuing in a marriage where she felt sidelined. Mary's was marked by resignation, a recognition that the marriage she once fought for had ended long ago. Kody's confession that he's stopped trying is, in many ways, the final puzzle piece. Strips away the last veneer of the official family story that external pressures and mutual disagreements were to blame. Instead, it points to an internal decision, a shift in his own heart and mind, that set the stage for the breakdown. It also highlights an uncomfortable truth for viewers who once saw the Brown family as a case study in how plural marriage could work. It only functions if every relationship is actively maintained. Neglect in one marriage creates a vacuum that can't be filled by the others.